Alan Holbrook didn't hear the sentence the first time. Not really. He was sitting at the kitchen table, elbows resting on the worn pine, dressed in a weekend flannel with the sleeves pushed to his forearms. There was a grocery list open in front of him, Monica's handwriting sloping down the left margin. Eggs, milk, cleaner for the stovetop. He'd been half listening, waiting for her to finish the last item so he could head to the store and maybe stop by the hardware shop to price out a new propane hose. Instead, she folded her hands, glanced up from her coffee, and said it like she was ordering new curtains. Rachel wants Greg to walk her down the aisle. Just like that. Alan didn't move. The world didn't tilt. The kitchen light didn't flicker. But something in his chest, a tendon, a wire, something that had been under tension for 20 years, snapped with the quietness of an old rope giving out. Greg, he said. The name felt foreign in his mouth, like he was trying to say a password in a language he didn't know. Monica didn't flinch. She feels close to him. Don't make this difficult. Don't make this difficult. It wasn't the sentence that broke him. It was the way she said it, like it was already decided, like he was the problem for reacting. Monica picked up her mug again and took a calm sip, as if she hadn't just slid a blade between his ribs and walked off humming. He watched the way she tucked her leg under herself on the chair, comfortable, at ease, like it wasn't a betrayal, like it wasn't a burial. Rachel was 7 when Alan met Monica. Her real dad vanished before the girl learned fractions. No cards, no checks, no calls, just gone. Alan was the one who taught her to ride a bike, patched her up when she broke her collarbone falling off the monkey bars, stayed up through panic attacks in high school, and stood in the crowd clapping with damp eyes when she got her degree from Iowa State. He was the one who loaned her money for that failed yoga studio, the one who bailed her out of that mess with the credit card debt. He even helped move her into that overpriced apartment she swore was temporary. Greg was just around, always just helping, smiling, nodding, friendly. Now Greg got the walk. Alan didn't argue. He didn't ask for reasons. He didn't raise his voice or say anything about the $14,000 he'd already wired for the wedding. He just stood up, grabbed his keys off the hook by the door, and walked to the garage. The air in there was still and cold, the kind of cold that settles deep into your shoulders and doesn't leave even when the sun comes out. It smelled of old sawdust, rusted nails, and the faint oily memory of machines he hadn't touched in a year. Alan sat down on the edge of the workbench. His hands rested on his knees. He didn't know how long he stayed like that. Long enough for the light to shift. Long enough to see the dust float around the old framed photo that sat near the back of the shelf. A picture of Rachel on his shoulders at the county fair, face painted like a tiger, both of them laughing. He remembered that day. The heat, the smell of kettle corn, the way she clung to his head and called him Dad without hesitation. And now she wanted Greg. He didn't cry. The tears felt like they belonged to someone else, maybe a younger man, maybe a weaker one. Alan had buried too many dogs, seen too many winters, watched too many people walk out of his life without so much as a backward glance. He pulled out his phone and opened the banking app. Then the wedding spreadsheet Monica made him share last month. Line items, balances, contacts. By midnight, 2 vendor deposits were frozen. By 3 a.m., he had a legal pad out. Not to plead, not to explain, just a checklist. Cancel Tux fittings. Call Ed Dunning. Lock access to joint credit. Review will. Backup photos. Not revenge. Not yet. But the foundation of something. Something clean. Something permanent. Alan stared out the garage window at the frozen lawn, the empty bird feeder swaying in the breeze. The silence wasn't comforting, it was clinical, like the cold metal of a surgical table. He picked up the photo of him and Rachel and flipped it face down. Then he made the call. The garage had always been Alan's quiet place, a refuge, a cathedral of tools and oil stains. But tonight it felt like a morgue. He sat on the old stool beside the lathe he hadn't used since his knees started going bad. The silence buzzed around him, louder than any drill. On the workbench was a legal pad, his black pen resting diagonally across the top. 6 items already scratched through. This wasn't grief. It wasn't a heartbreak. It was an inventory. The photo of Rachel, still face down from hours earlier, was next to a stack of bills he'd pulled from the file drawer. Tuition payments, birthday receipts, plane tickets from her college years when she called at midnight sobbing and he drove 6 hours to help her pack. In every line item he saw not just the money, but the time, the hours he bled into her life. Gone. Forgotten. Replaced. He pulled out a pen and underlined 2 words on his list. Ed Dunning. The man had been a PI back in the day. Helped Alan trace a contractor who skimmed over $90,000 from a veterans housing project in Cedar Rapids. Dunning didn't look like much, wire-thin with a cough that sounded like old brakes. But he got results. Discreetly. Alan didn't want rumors. He wanted truth. Greg Brandt had always rubbed him wrong. Friendly, yes. Handy. Always around. Always available to help Monica lift something, move something, patch something. A real good neighbor. Too good. Alan reached over and opened the drawer beneath the bench. Inside was a bottle of wild turkey he hadn't touched in 5 years. He unscrewed the cap, let the scent bite his nose, and took a single sip. Not for comfort, just to remind himself this wasn't a dream. He looked around the garage. Every inch was something he'd built. The shelves, the drywall, the lights, the insulation he stuffed in himself during that winter Rachel caught pneumonia. He remembered Monica bringing him cocoa while he worked, and remembered Greg dropping by just to say hi. That had been, 6 years ago? 6 years. A number that suddenly meant something. Alan grabbed his phone and tapped in the digits from memory. It was 1:14 a.m., but Ed picked up after 2 rings. You got something for me, Alan? Ed's voice was gravel. I need eyes on a guy named Gregory Brandt. Local. Real cozy with my wife. I want the truth. Nothing flashy. Quiet surveillance. You still got that folder guy? He coughed. Still do. Still uses film, too. Do you want the full package or just the quick scan? Full package, Alan said. Receipts. Hotel logs. Photos if you get them. You think she's stepping out? I think I'm done guessing. Alan hung up without saying goodbye. He didn't need pleasantries anymore. He spent the next few hours logging into accounts, joint credit cards, savings, backup drives. He redirected 2 deposits from the wedding fund to his personal business account. Then he removed Monica's authorization from the joint card they never used but which she had access to. By 3:41 a.m., his fingers were cold, and his knee throbbed. He stood, joints creaking, and moved to the pegboard above the bench. Dozens of tools hung there, perfect, organized. He'd kept this garage neater than most kitchens. He pulled a red file folder from a small safe in the corner, labeled Family Emergency Holbrook. Inside were insurance documents, copies of the house deed, and backup account numbers. He added 3 new items: list of wedding vendors, receipts for the initial deposits, handwritten note, do not release control of funds without written instruction from A. Holbrook. He sealed the folder and placed it back in the safe. The sky was starting to lighten beyond the small garage window. Morning was crawling in. A new day. But something had already ended the night before. Alan reached over, flipped the photo of Rachel and him face up. He didn't study it. He didn't smile. He simply stared at it until it blurred and said under his breath, "Let's see what Greg's hiding." Then he turned off the lights and closed the door behind him. 3 days later, a beige pickup pulled into Alan's driveway at 6:17 a.m., tires crunching softly over the frost-tipped gravel. Ed Dunning stepped out wearing a windbreaker 3 sizes too big and holding a manila envelope that looked too heavy to just be paper. Alan met him at the side door, coffee in hand, jaw clenched so tight he hadn't yawned in 48 hours. Ed gave a short nod, didn't bother with greetings. "You want the truth, Alan?" he said, lifting the envelope like a small casket. "You better sit." Alan didn't sit. He stepped aside and motioned to the kitchen table. They spread the file open next to the same half-finished grocery list from earlier that week. The word cleaner is still visible beneath a hotel receipt dated 3 years ago. Monica and Greg, Des Moines, 1 king bed, same-day checkout. Alan stared at it, not with shock, with recognition. That was the weekend Monica claimed she was visiting her cousin in Kansas City. He'd stayed behind to fix the porch railing. She paid for everything, Ed said, flipping pages. Rooms, meals, gas. Sometimes in cash, sometimes on the joint card under grocery aliases. Look here, Whole Foods charges in Missouri. Nope, that's a motel in Branson. Alan didn't react. His eyes scanned each receipt, each photo. Monica enters hotel lobbies with Greg, sometimes arm in arm. One picture showed her laughing outside a rental cabin, her hand on Greg's chest, their bodies close like teenagers behind the gym. She was careful, but he wasn't, Ed said, tossing down a DMV pull. Gregory Allen Brandt, 49. No steady employment since 2016. Owes back child support in 2 states. 2 foreclosures. Filed Chapter 13 twice. Lives off consulting gigs, which is code for women like your wife. Alan reached for the next sheet. A credit report. Greg's finances looked like a demolition site. Guy's a charm parasite, Ed added. Finds a woman with access, plays the long game. I've seen the pattern. Women in transition. Lonely. Slightly bored. Middle-age itch. He plays the handyman/therapist and lets them build him a life. Another photo, Greg at a Christmas party 3 years ago. Alan remembered that night. Rachel's engagement was still fresh. Monica had insisted Greg drop by. Alan was wearing the same shirt he wore now. Ed tapped the edge of the photo. He's wearing your damn watch in this one. Alan didn't blink. I want copies of everything, he said, voice even. Digital and physical. Timeline, cross-referenced with family events. I already did that, Ed said, sliding over a stapled dossier titled GB versus H, Timeline of Infidelity and Financial Use. Alan flipped through it. Graduation week, motel. Rachel's bridal shower, Airbnb rental Monica booked alone. The family beach trip Monica said she couldn't attend due to work stress. That same weekend, Greg's truck was parked outside her hotel. She'd missed Alan's retirement dinner, claimed she had a migraine. Greg was with her in Madison, checking into a spa resort. Alan stared at the line item. I planned that dinner for 4 months, he said, almost to himself. Hired a jazz quartet. Ed nodded slowly. She was in a hot tub with this asshole while you were thanking people for their service. The kettle on the stove clicked. Alan didn't move to pour more coffee. He didn't even look at Ed. He just kept reading. Monica's betrayal wasn't emotional. It was logistical, scheduled, budgeted, overlapping their life like a spreadsheet with hidden tabs. Why him? Alan asked quietly. Ed shrugged. Because he's easy. Weak men don't challenge choices. They confirm them. But you're steady. You're stone. That's not sexy after a while. Greg makes her feel like the victim. That's his trick. Alan didn't say anything for a while. Then he stood and walked to the back door, opened it to the frozen yard, and stared at the bare tree line like it might give him answers. This ain't a divorce yet, he said flatly. Ed waited. I want leverage. Full legal prep. I want the funds separate, the assets secure, and the event intact until I say otherwise. Wedding still on? Ed asked. Alan's eyes narrowed. I paid for the damn thing. That vineyard's mine until the last flute of champagne. Ed nodded, stepping back toward the door. You want me to keep digging? Only if he twitches. If he's got another woman in orbit or another scheme brewing, I want eyes on it. Ed paused before leaving. You want my advice? No. Ed left anyway. Alan stood in the doorway for a while longer. Then he walked back to the table, sat down, and picked up a pen. He started a new list, cleaner handwriting, sharper bullets. Next steps. Call attorney. Secure wedding accounts. Redraft vendor contracts. Contingency plan. One sealed envelope. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. The worst part of betrayal wasn't the lie. It was how small it made your love look in hindsight. Alan wasn't going to shrink. He'd built homes, raised a daughter, held this family together with sweat and silence. He wasn't going to be the one humiliated. Not quietly. Not ever. Downtown Cedar Hollow didn't offer much in the way of architecture, but Tessa Cole's office was built like a vault. Frosted glass, brushed steel fixtures, not a single wasted inch. Suited her. Tessa didn't do small talk. She did the results. Alan sat across from her in a gray Henley and work jeans, shoulders square, hands calm. On the table between them, Ed Dunning's file, a thumb drive, and a thick envelope of copies. Tessa flipped through the stack, eyes sharp behind black-rimmed glasses. When she reached the timeline of hotel stays and cross-referenced credit charges, she exhaled through her nose, one of the few things Alan had ever seen from her. "She's funding her affair with your accounts," she said. "And if the wedding goes through as structured, you'll be paying for the party that hands your daughter over to the man who helped dismantle your family." Alan didn't flinch. "That's the part one already understood. I'm not here for divorce." Tessa arched an eyebrow. "No, not yet. I want containment, structure, and a failsafe." He handed her a second folder, contracts from the caterer, band, photographer, and venue, all paid through Alan's LLC account. He'd done it that way months ago as a tax write-off. Now it serves a different purpose. "I've rewritten each contract. The payee is still my company, but we include a clause: no change in procession, title, or event structure without written confirmation from me. If someone tries to alter who walks Rachel down the aisle, they're instructed to cancel services immediately." Tessa leafed through the redrafted agreements, mouth twitching with respect. "You've already drafted them? I had time. You want me to notarize and file? And hold the originals? I'll deliver the copies myself." She set the folder down. "That's containment. What about the failsafe?" Alan leaned back slightly, reached into his coat, and pulled out a red-sealed envelope. He placed it on the table like a detonator. "This goes to the wedding planner, Jenna Wilkes. Sealed. She's instructed to open it only if Monica or Rachel tries to remove me from the ceremony, especially from the role of walking Rachel down the aisle." Tessa gave him a look. Not judgment, praisal. "What's inside?" "Vendor termination directives, legal notice revoking payment authority, and a second folder labeled Exhibit A. It contains documentation of Monica's affair with Greg, time-stamped to Rachel's college graduation and other family milestones. Photos, financials. It's designed for maximum public damage if opened." "Jesus, Alan. No, just balance." Tessa closed the folder and nodded once. "It's surgical. It's necessary." There was a long silence between them. Outside, the wind scraped against the window, the muffled hum of traffic filtering in from the street below. "You're not going to warn her?" Tessa asked. "No. She'll be blindsided." Alan's jaw tightened. "So was I." She folded her hands. "If you're not seeking divorce now, I assume this is leverage." "It's a correction," Alan replied. "She rewrote history and erased me from my daughter's life. I'm just giving her a chance to choke on the pen." Tessa leaned forward, her voice low and professional. "If this envelope is triggered and the wedding collapses publicly, your marriage likely ends in court. Possibly war." Alan nodded once. "Then let her fire first." Tessa stood and walked to the copy machine. As it warmed up, she called over her shoulder, "You've got a steel spine, Alan. I see a lot of men come in here babbling, begging, unraveling. But you—" "I'm done being useful," he said. "That's all most men are. A set of hands until they're inconvenient." She returned with a new sealed copy of the envelope and handed it to him. "Deliver that to Jenna Wilkes personally. And Alan, make sure she understands the weight of it." "I will." As he left the office, coat buttoned against the Iowa chill, Alan's boots hit the pavement with measured purpose. This wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't revenge. It was structured, clean, sharp, just like the life he'd built, now weaponized to protect the only thing he had left: dignity. The seal in his pocket didn't burn. Pulsed. Not yet opened. Not yet needed. But if they erased him from the page, he was ready to be the ink that bled through. Alan arrived at the vineyard 2 hours before the rehearsal. No announcement, no fanfare, just his truck pulling up to the gravel drive, clean and unremarkable. He wore a charcoal coat and dark jeans, a neutral look for a man watching the structure he built prepare to crown someone else king. The venue was already buzzing. White chairs arranged in perfect rows beneath draped lights, floral arches blooming above the altar. He'd paid for every damn petal. At the main hall, Jenna Wilkes, the wedding planner, stood over a clipboard barking logistics to two assistants. She wore a headset and a hard face, the kind only professionals wore when people with money were about to pretend they cared about elegance more than dysfunction. Alan approached her calmly. She turned, ready to tell someone they were late with a tablecloth, then paused when she saw his face. "Mr. Holbrook," she said, surprised. "Didn't know you were coming by today. I won't be long." He reached into his coat and handed her the red-sealed envelope. Her fingers hesitated. "What is this?" "A legal directive. To be opened only if there's a change in procession, especially regarding who walks Rachel down the aisle." Jenna blinked. "Excuse me? If someone tries to remove me from the role I paid for, the event collapses by design. Vendors, staff, everything. All tied to me. That envelope contains instructions." She looked at it, then at him. "You want me to destroy your daughter's wedding?" "No," Alan said, calm as a winter pond. "I want to protect the truth. And the investment." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Understood. Is this a bluff?" "No." Jenna tucked the envelope into the leather planner she carried like a Bible. "I'll keep it safe. I won't open it unless necessary." "Appreciated." He nodded once and left her standing there, a little paler than when he arrived. Alan didn't linger near the main rehearsal. He circled the edge of the vineyard, keeping to the distance, like a man walking the fence of a field he used to own. From the edge of a low stone wall, he could see them. Monica in a beige dress, Rachel in full rehearsal mode, beaming, holding a mock bouquet. Greg stood just off-center in a tuxedo Alan had paid for. His tuxedo. Greg laughed with someone from the bridal party, a casual hand around Monica's lower back. His presence was smug, casual, like he'd earned it. Alan didn't blink. He just watched. He watched Rachel link arms with Greg and practice the slow walk down the aisle. He watched Monica wipe a fake tear from the corner of her eye. He watched as a decade of fatherhood was replaced by a man who hadn't scraped ice off her windshield or sat through her student loan meetings. Alan didn't approach. He didn't interrupt. He knew his place. That's why the envelope existed. The fuse was in place. All it needed was friction. The assistants fanned out with wine glasses. A playlist test echoed over the speaker system. People laughed, unaware of the storm cloud tethered to Jenna Wilkes's clipboard. Alan took one last look at the altar. He'd raised that girl from 7 to 30, paid for college, covered mistakes, held her when no one else would. And in the final chapter, he wasn't even a footnote. He was a ghost in work boots watching someone else take credit for his life's work. He turned and walked back toward his truck. As he passed the row of parked cars, his phone buzzed with a message. From Monica. "Thank you again for covering the bar upgrade. Greg really appreciates it." He stared at it, didn't reply, didn't even delete it. He just let it sit there, glowing, as he slid the phone into his pocket. Somewhere in that vineyard, a celebration was rehearsing a lie, and Alan had just delivered the pin to its grenade. The morning of the wedding was perfect. 72 degrees, soft breeze, blue sky brushed with thin white clouds. The kind of day photographers pray for, and Alan had paid for it all. He parked his truck on the ridge above the vineyard, far enough to remain invisible, close enough to see the guests trickling in like ants toward a sugar spill. Folding chairs fanned out in curved rows beneath cream drapes and string lights. A string quartet tuned instruments near the altar. Waiters lined up champagne flutes on polished wood tables. Every detail precise, elegant, expensive. And not one person mentioned Alan Holbrook. He sat alone in the cab, engine off, coffee in hand, eyes fixed on the scene below like a hunter watching the wrong man take credit for his kill. Greg arrived early, of course. wearing the final tailored tux that Alan's LLC had paid for, laughing with groomsmen like he belonged. Monica hovered nearby, smiling too wide. Rachel floated in and out of the crowd, radiant and nervous in her designer gown, clutching her bouquet like a lifeline. They had all rehearsed the lie perfectly, but something shifted. Alan noticed it first in the body language. Guests arriving with polite smiles and wedding cards began whispering. Not just idle gossip, confusion, small murmurs of absence. "Where's Alan?" a silver-haired uncle asked as he shook Greg's hand. "Thought he was giving Rachel away," whispered someone near the wine station. "Wait, wasn't this whole place arranged by her stepdad?" The silence Alan had cultivated was now echoing back louder than he ever could have spoken. Down by the altar, Monica's head was on a swivel. Rachel checked her phone twice. Greg tugged at his collar. Sweat had started to pearl along his hairline despite the mild air. Alan took a slow sip of coffee, watching. Then he saw her, Jenna Wilkes, professional, polished, clipboard against her chest, walking down the center aisle with intention. Her hand hovered near the planner binder like a gunslinger nearing her holster. She wasn't panicking. Not yet. But she was aware something was off. Alan didn't move. He didn't text. He didn't interfere. He just waited. Below, a bridesmaid approached Rachel, whispered in her ear. Rachel's brow furrowed. Her eyes scanned the crowd. Once, twice. Then her lips tightened. Alan had seen that face before. It was the same one she wore the day he told her no. She couldn't drop out of college just because her boyfriend broke up with her. Monica walked over. There was a short exchange. Rachel pointed toward the back rows. Monica checked her phone, then the time. Greg leaned in, tried to soothe. It didn't work. Another guest asked Jenna where Alan was. Jenna smiled tightly, then turned away and gripped the planner. The crack was visible now. Not a scream, not a collapse, but the first soft fracture in the surface. Alan leaned forward in his seat, arms crossed on the steering wheel, chin resting on them. He watched the way Rachel clutched her bouquet tighter, the way Monica's fingers drummed against her hip, the way Greg smiled too much, too fast, like a man trying to bluff his way through a hand with no cards. From where he sat, Alan could see the string quartet glance toward the commotion, then glance at each other. The illusion was holding, barely. He could feel the tension coiling beneath the ceremony like a live wire under fresh paint. Everyone was still smiling, but now they were asking. Now they were wondering, where was the man who built this? The crowd hadn't been told, but the absence was speaking for him. Alan sat back in the seat and turned his phone face down on the dash. He didn't need messages, didn't need a moment. He had already spoken, through contracts, through silence, through that red envelope quietly ticking away in Jenna's binder like a soft, humming landmine. No rage, no shouting, no warnings, just structure, just truth waiting to be unsealed. It happened just before the procession. The string quartet had paused, waiting on their cue. Guests murmured softly. Champagne glasses clinked. Rachel stood behind the barn doors with her bouquet trembling in her grip, waiting for the music to start, for the moment every bride dreams about. But then Monica approached Jenna Wilkes, voice low and urgent. "We need to change the order," she said. Rachel's feeling overwhelmed. "Greg will walk her down the aisle. Let's just move Alan off the program quietly." Jenna froze. Her clipboard hung in her arms like it had gained weight. "I'm sorry, Monica," she said. "I have specific instructions not to proceed if the order changes." "It's just a small change," Monica hissed, smiling tight, trying to stay composed. "Rachel wants Greg. Alan said he wouldn't even show. This isn't a big deal." Jenna reached into her planner and withdrew the red-sealed envelope. "I was told to open this if that exact change occurred." Monica blinked. "That's not necessary." But Jenna had already broken the seal. The music stopped. The quartet looked around, confused. Rachel, still waiting behind the barn doors, noticed the silence and peeked around the edge. Jenna pulled out the letter. "Read the first paragraph. Then the second." She looked up at Monica with something between pity and professionalism. All vendor contracts have just been terminated. What? Monica's voice cracked. The venue, the catering, the band, the photographer, every service tied to this event is paid through Mr. Holbrook's business account. This document revokes your authority and triggers contract nullification due to breach of agreed procession terms. Monica's face drained. Jenna raised a hand toward her assistant and simply said, "Initiate." And just like that, the wedding began to dissolve. The band packed their instruments. The caterers began rolling away trays of hors d'oeuvres. The bartender locked the kegs. Confused guests began whispering louder. "What's going on? Is something wrong? Where's the bride?" Greg appeared beside Monica, face pale. "What did he do?" Monica didn't answer. She was staring at the second folder Jenna had handed her. Exhibit A, labeled in block letters. Jenna, without a word, walked away. Monica peeled open the folder with shaking hands. The first page was a list of dates, side-by-side entries. Rachel's college graduation, Motel 6 receipt, Monica plus Greg, 1 king. Alan's retirement dinner, spa resort, Monica plus Greg, same weekend. Rachel's engagement party, Airbnb, 2 nights, card ending in 2048, joint account. The next page was photographs, blurry, undeniable. Monica with Greg, laughing, kissing, holding hands in hotel lobbies. Time-stamped, cross-referenced, betrayal in 8 by 10 gloss. She dropped the folder. Rachel picked it up. Alan, still in his truck, watched through binoculars as his daughter scanned the papers, her lips moving silently as if reading would change the truth. Then the sobbing began. Not quiet, not soft. Rachel screamed, not at a person, at the collapse. The guests were hushed now, stunned. Some tried to pretend they didn't see. Others openly stared. One groomsman asked, "Is this a joke?" The pastor walked off in confusion. Monica tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Greg backed away like a man watching fire leap up a stairwell, knowing he started it. Rachel crumpled the photos and screamed, "How long?" No one answered. She turned, mascara already running, and staggered toward the barn, dress catching on the gravel. Monica followed, calling her name like that would undo it. Greg stood alone, tuxedo wrinkled, sweat glistening down his temple. And Alan? He never left the truck. He didn't need to. He watched it all from the ridge. Every false smile peeled away. Every dollar he spent collapsing under the weight of their deceit. The illusion hadn't just cracked. It had crumbled. In front of everyone. Because truth doesn't need a microphone. It just needs the right timing. By the time Rachel's cries had faded behind the barn doors and the last of the catering staff rolled away the empty trays, Alan had already started the truck. He didn't wait to see who cried the hardest. He didn't need to know which guest would later whisper, "You know, he raised that girl since she was 7. That part didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. Not vengeance, just a correction. The gravel crunched under his tires as he backed down the ridge and eased onto the county road. No music, no radio, just the steady hum of the old V8 engine and the early shadows of late afternoon pressing in through the windshield. He passed 2 wedding guests walking toward their cars, arguing softly. They didn't recognize the man behind the wheel. They didn't know they were looking at the architect of the collapse. Alan didn't flinch. The road curved around a cornfield and disappeared into the horizon, just like his name had disappeared from the wedding program. His phone buzzed in the center console. Once, then again, then again. He ignored it for a mile. Then he reached down and glanced at the screen. From Rachel. "Why would you ruin my wedding?" He stared at it. The words didn't hit him like a punch. They hit him like a confirmation. He raised her, funded her, protected her. And when he refused to be erased quietly, he became the villain. Alan set the phone back down. Didn't reply. Didn't even unlock the screen. Another message popped up, Monica this time. He didn't bother reading it. Instead, he rolled down the window, let the warm wind cut across his face, and exhaled. Not sadness, not anger, just weight. The weight of a man finally stepping outside someone else's story. For decades, he'd been a role player in a script someone else wrote. Father figure, provider, silent workhorse. They had counted on his silence, banked on his restraint. They mistook it for weakness. But silence has power. And today, it exploded in front of white linens, champagne flutes, and 124 invited guests. Alan didn't need applause. He didn't need to win. He just needed to walk away before they tried to rewrite the ending again. Back at the vineyard, they would try to put it back together. They'd offer explanations, spin stories, beg for sympathy. Let them. He was done. 20 years of effort reduced to a single, indifferent sentence. Rachel wants Greg to walk her down the aisle. Fine. Let him. Let Greg carry the weight now. Let Monica explain how a wedding unraveled over one envelope. Let Rachel wonder why the man who raised her, paid for her dreams, never responded. Because sometimes the loudest message a man can send is to leave without a word.